Please listen carefully.
Well, hello, universe. Welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Summers
And I'm Kristy Jansen, and we're part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to help make it one focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy, hump day-worthy podcast. Today is Wednesday, the 3rd of February, 2021, and it is quiet in my house this morning.
Why is it quiet? You have no packing going on, huh?
Exactly. No, our packing strategy is, flurries of activity with moments of lull. We had a team of folks here helping yesterday. We got tons of dishes and fragiles and whatnot packed and books. As I was listening to you guys record the podcast, I packed like 4 book boxes. My entire office library is packed up. But yes, today there is nothing happening around here. And I feel a bit like Sisyphus in the sense that it's all this packing and then I have to put the boxes strategically somewhere in the house so that they're not dangerous to the baby and like rearrange the house so we can actually live in it for another 25 days. But it's good. It's good. We got a big chunk done yesterday. I still managed to get work done. The baby had a fun day at the park with her nanny and they did picnics in the park and played all day. And it was a good day. It was pretty productive. So I did very much miss speaking on the podcast, but I, as you guys know, was constantly harassing Amelia and Kristy with my comments on chat.
I know, it was very distracting, Summers. It was very distracting, and I'm sure that Amelia smoothed out some of those breaks as I was reading your comments.
I felt like your annoying little sister who was like, but wait. So, how are you today, my friend? How is the world up in your neck of the woods?
The world is very, it's nice. We also have a sunny day here. As we were talking about yesterday about Groundhog Day, I've gotten so much better in going to work in my house, setting up my office every morning and breaking it down every night. I wonder what's going to happen when it's time to actually go back to a real place. I don't know. And then the other thing that I mentioned to you earlier is that I just took my car in for service and I got to drop it off at Top Shop Auto here in Goleta, where I live. And it's interesting because I've known the owner of that shop since I was in college when I had a VW Bug. And so for basically half my life, I've known this man who now he still has a shop, and I've known him when I was pregnant. He gave me a gift package. That's when I had a VW Passat. Anyway, it's just nice to see him, and his partner just passed away, which is sad. A friend of mine worked for him in the way back before he sadly died of a drug overdose. So it's like we've shared loss, and there's something about the power of relationships over a lifetime. And this is just one of my service providers, right? He's a car mechanic. He's a wonderful guy, and I'm just so happy that he's in my life. And it was just nice to see him again. It's been years since I saw him because up until recently I had a used car, so I was having it serviced at a. I'm sorry, I'm talking.
Okay, so let's get to the crux of what this really was for you, Kristy. This was such a wonderful opportunity for you to have gratitude for human connection.
Yes.
And that human connection is something that we didn't used to be grateful for in the way that we are now, right? And the longevity of friendships and the legacy of relationships and the stories we have with one another are so valuable. My dearest friends, my quarantine pod, my mermaid pod, have all expressed sadness about me moving because while I'll be moving to a new town and certainly will make new friends, what I won't have with those new friends is that legacy of storytelling.
Yeah.
Right. Where we know one another from our core and through our thick and our thin. And I just love that you got to experience that this morning and that it was really, really touching to you. And I think when we talk about love and this Valentine's season, blah, 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 what I love more about love are those kind of relationships where you can really know gratitude for the love and friendship you feel for people you have known for the better part of 30 years
Yeah.
or 20 years or,
And it's interesting to have those kinds of relationships which are grounded in the passing of time,
Mhm.
which makes it, even though I live in a mid-sized city, town, whatever, it's not just a anonymous dropping off your car at the
Mhm.
dealer and having no knowledge of that person's life and them of you. And we're not friends exactly because I've never shared a meal with Willie, for example. You know what I mean? I've just dropped my car off. But
Yeah.
over the years, we've formed this relationship, which is more than just the single unitary string, right?
Yeah.
It's a web there. And like when I was younger, I used to think that you could become best friends with somebody just by meeting, like when you start college and there's that intensity of new relationships which get formed and you stay up all night talking about your lives and it feels like that is your new best friend. But as
Yeah.
I've gotten older and I see how time also seasons friendships and going through good times and bad times together and then sometimes not having anything to do with each other and then coming back and reconnecting, how important those kinds of relationships are.
Yeah. Yeah.
In addition, the other reason I thought it was a funny thing to talk about is that I got to know Willie and Topshop because I used to have my first car was a 1971 VW Bug, and Topshop was purely at that time a service shop for Volkswagens.
For Volkswagens. Well,
Yeah,
are you giving me a segue
I am.
to my
So
conversation?
I am.
Ooh, I love it. Well, okay, so VW from 1971 to 2021 has been impressing Kristy and Summers. The headline that as you guys know, I get really, really, really excited about this, as does Kristy, because the understanding that we have to have a circular economy for batteries in the future just is like completely our jam. But this headline reads, VW opens EV battery recycling plant in preparation for an electric future. So, as we all know, the electric revolution is making its unabated headway. Municipalities worldwide are committing to electric vehicle fleets. Cities are committing to growth in that direction. And it's very, very exciting. Manufacturers are also recognizing that, great, we're going to have to expand our manufacturing, but we are also going to have to simultaneously expand our commitment to recycling these darn batteries. With that in mind, so VW just opened up their recycling plant in Germany, Salzgitter, Germany, with the intention of building sort of a second life for these batteries by simply building new batteries out of them. And this dedicated plant will deconstruct the batteries, and from it, the process was going to yield raw materials for producing these new batteries like copper, aluminum, lithium, manganese, cobalt, and graphite. Now, we talk over and over and over about the difficulty of recycling does predicate itself on the fact that it's very easy to recycle just like one thing, just one piece of plastic. But when they're all combined into something, it becomes an entirely different process. So I love the idea of these dedicated recycling plants. What I think this could advance across the industry is not only improving the EV capacity for recycling, but improving all recycling plants' capacity to deconstruct materials for future efforts.
Yeah, and I think the concept is really to not think of it as recycling, but rather it's that demanufacturing process and then, re-refining and then being able to recover all that material,
Yeah,
which it just makes it closes that circular loop.
exactly. Exactly. So well done, Volkswagen. Thank you for currying Kristy safely with her 1971 vehicle, although I imagine that was not back in 1971 that you were driving.
No, it was
a bit later.
Like as old as I was or whatever.
My first car was an 88 BMW actually. And I drove that from the age of like 16 to 29. I was born in 78, so the car was not new when I began driving. And I love, if you could buy your old car, would you? Like if you really could buy back your old car, would you get it?
That car I had a lot of affection for.
What was her name or his name? Did it have a name?
It did, as a matter of fact. It was a Zulu. because I had bought it from a coworker of my mother's who was from South Africa, and the license plate was EH Zulu. And so I kept the license plate when I got the car, and I drove that car for probably 8 years, from when and it was a neat car. Of course, going up into the hills, I could, top speed 35 miles per hour or something like that. But it was, I loved that car because it was my first car.
Right. Mine was baby blue, and I actually sold her, and then about 4 years later saw her on the freeway in Los Angeles. I sold her to somebody down in San Diego who I guess then sold it to a kid in Los Angeles, and I completely stalked this kid. Like, I followed him to work to stop and take a picture with my old car. And there was this one really great big scratch. It was a convertible. There was this one great big scratch that simply couldn't be dealt with. And it was from a time that I was trying to take a propane tank for my barbecue out of it, and I scratched it. And he was like, I always wondered what that was. The car is in perfect condition except for this one major scratch. And I was like, yeah, that was me at, 20 years old trying to get a propane tank for my barbecue and not being wise about it. So, because it was this little 2-door. So anyway, love to old cars, love to circular economies. I would rebuy back baby blue if I could.
So here we are talking about old cars, about VWs, about reuse and repurposing and recycling. I think this is perfectly themed with this.
Exactly. It's a perfect hump day conversation. But what's also perfect today is equality. Don't you think?
I think so. And so thank you for that little
somewhat awkward transition.
Yeah, but that's okay. Because the article that I really wanted to focus on, the headline reads, How an Internal Culture Change at Netflix is Helping to Fight Inequality Within the Company. And I think this is a really important concept. And what this article goes into is talking about how Netflix, being as it is right now in this very powerful position in terms of content creation, I am counting my year by different periods of time when I was binging different Netflix series. Really, it's one of my main sources of entertainment in my family.
Love it.
Last year.
Love it.
And I've admired how this company has approached creating a culture of inclusion and equality. They were one of the first to allow significant parental leave. We're not talking about that here because what we're talking about here is the explicit goal from Netflix to both create more diverse representation, but also in order to do that, to have a more diverse work staff, because they know that studies show that businesses grow significantly and innovation thrives with the inclusion of more perspectives and more representation. It's having that investment in diversity of thought and ideas that's where creativity comes. And when you're in a creative industry like media and content creation, this is a boon. And if Netflix is going to be more powerful brand, having that kind of internal culture, I think will lead to more interesting stories. I know that I have spent a lot of time. One of my favorite things that we watch here are different series that are set in different cities and cultures around the world. We got really into some South Korean series, some Scandinavian series. The French Netflix sensation Lupin that was wonderful. We loved that. We ate that up a couple weekends ago. So I just feel like I just really liked this article, and it also underscores how important what we watch and see, how it shapes how we think about the world.
So I love that Netflix is a company that walks the walk, right? They don't just talk the talk. And there is a show that's pretty widely watched right now, Bridgerton, on Netflix.
Oh, yes.
And it is a 19th century period drama. But what it actually does, British drama, what it actually does is it sort of disabuses us of the history and instead says, what if it were different? What if it was a multiracial experience? What if aristocracy wasn't hierarchically white? What if?
Well, it does. But I mean, that show is a pretty, it's very campy. So
at its core,
I love it.
at its core, the show is escapism, right? Like, it's sexy escapism. learning about like how babies are made while wearing pretty dresses and feeling angst about gossip magazines. But what I love is the subtlety of diversity and inclusion. And I actually worked with an organization for a while before I came to the Optimist Daily, where we were addressing diversity and inclusion in storytelling. This was a medical research company that had made a commitment to, in the way that they were pursuing field testing and medical trials, to include diversity and inclusion. And one of the most basic things was just tell the story with diverse people. Don't tell a story about diversity at all times. And just include diversity in the cast. And certainly we saw this with Hamilton. And we see this in so much of Netflix work. And while it's not taking on diversity as an issue, it's acknowledging diversity as a reality. And that's what I love that Netflix does in its content, in its culture. I think that they're a really great company, and I have a total like nerd crush on their company culture.
Yeah, and Vernee Myers, who's the VP of Inclusion Strategy at Netflix, is sort of behind this, and she's been interviewed quite a bit. Part of her point is that creating in-depth cultural change and addressing the previously unacknowledged issues of systemic inequality doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
But you have to build up to that. And that process has to be comprehensive. It has to be thoughtful, strategic. It's not just about shifting the cosmetic, but also evolving and improving the storytelling and the internal culture and making it not about, it's not like patting yourselves on the back just because you have a friend who's of a different background, or I have a black friend, or I have my husband is from Mexico, whatever. It's not that, because it becomes unremarkable at some point. Right. And that's the thing that's interesting about like shows like Bridgerton. It's the makeup of the cast is completely unremarked.
Exactly. Even though they do acknowledge it.
They do acknowledge it, but it's acknowledged not in that's not the main point of the whole story. It's part of the world that they've built.
Right. We're going down a rabbit hole, and Amelia's going to kill us because she wants let me rephrase that. We're going down a rabbit hole, and Amelia's going to wish we made this edit easier for her. But one last comment that I'll make, and then I'll let you kind of close it out. But it disabuses this notion of the articulate, person of color, right? Like this whole super offensive idea of I know so-and-so who's a very articulate, person of color, which is just literally like one of the most offensive things you can say. And instead, it's just that people of color and people who are white exist in society together, regardless of their articulate capacity. I just think that Netflix is really like taking this straight on. And to anyone, if you on a regular basis applaud the articulate person of color, know that that's just not walking the walk. That's talking the talk. So maybe
similarly, I mean, and I can best relate to it when I think about inclusion on a gender perspective, and the idea that to be a powerful, successful woman, you have to emulate those masculine traits that get the most, you have to be strong and, win the wars, and you can't be a cooperative player, but you have to be a competitor, right? Having those kinds of sort of those quotes, hyper masculinized traits that you have to then embody in order to be successful. I feel like has been a disservice to women who are working in today's world, because I think that the whole culture would be better to be more collaborative, to be more, and I think that is starting to happen as women who tend to be more like that. But I know lots of men who are very collaborative too,
right?
And I know women who are very competitive.
The genderification, the race alignment with of articulation, of power, of leadership, all of that is like not the path to the future. The path to the future is what companies like Netflix are doing, and what we try to do with the Optimist Daily.
And it's not something to fear being like, it's not like one group is being supplanted or replaced. It's really having those different kinds of ideas and different perspectives ends up making the company and the products much stronger. It leads to success. And that's why I think it's a good idea.
Okay, so speaking of success, We've been going on and have some success to go cultivate ourselves at work today. But what you can do in the interim is check out some amazing headlines on the Optimist Daily, which there are plenty today, as always. We're not going to go through any more because we have gone on a bit. Kristy, do you want to read us out?
I will certainly do such a wonderful thing. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to today's very verbose Optimist Daily update. Thank you for being here. We promise to keep sharing these kinds of positive solution-based stories with ideas on how you can participate in the changing world and help ensure it is changed for the good. We promise to keep covering current events with accuracy, legitimate sources, offering you the information you need to help chart new paths for all of us. And if you haven't already, and if you have the means, please consider becoming an emissary on the optimistdaily.com. And for just starting at $5 a month, you can help support reader-funded independent journalism, be a part of the solution-changing consciousness that addresses our world's biggest challenges with a problem-solving mindset.
Let's keep the Optimist Daily free to all who need it, supported by those who can. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Wednesday.